Thank you for listening to the BJJ Brick Podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to flatten your Jiu-Jitsu learning curve, help you get the most out of your grappling ability, and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Welcome back, my friends, to the BJJ Brick Podcast. This is episode 245. If that was a weight class, you'd be probably on the bigger end of most jiu-jitsu people. Today we're talking about big grapplers and small grapplers and mixing them and dealing with those sort of things. My name is Byron. I'm here with my buddies Gary and Joe. Hey, Gary, how's it going?
Oh, it's going fabulous. I can't complain. I'm ready to have an awesome episode today.
Fabulous. I love the, you don't hear that one every day. And Gary just got his nails done.
I'm a little flamboyant. You know that.
Oh, yeah. And Joe, how are you today?
Marvelous.
Oh, we got marvelous and fabulous.
Man, I was just going to say doing well, but you guys got me beat.
Yep.
Yeah, life's good down on the Gulf Coast here, so
well, good.
Ready to rock and roll and do this podcast with y'all.
I know we've all had experiences when grappling with somebody who was either much larger or much smaller. We talked a little bit about this on the last show, and we're kind of in the middle range, I feel. And it depends on which gym you walk into and that sort of thing. But I think we'll be able to offer advice for both categories. If you're a small person, you might be thinking, yes, this is the perfect show for me. I'll learn how to take down these big people. Well, maybe a few tips on that. But also, if you're a big person, I really want you to get something out of this as far as being able to grapple with the smaller people and still learn jiu-jitsu and work on your game and not just feel like you just went to a kid's class and rolled with people who are 100 pounds less than you. I think we could accomplish both those today. That's kind of the goal.
Yeah, but I actually like going to the kids' class because I actually do pretty well in that class. You know, I get a couple submissions. You know, I get tapped out a couple times, but normally I get one or two more submissions than I do tap outs than getting tapped out.
Yeah, you're always kind of playing games in those classes, Gary.
Well, I don't mean to. You know, I really want to just roll, you know, to establish my dominance. But a lot of times the teacher does do games.
Well, that setup didn't work at all. Today I want to mention that we have an audiobook called 6 Games for BJJ. They're training games.
I missed that one, Byron.
Alley-oop and early. The miss.
Yeah, right down the middle of the plate, and I swung and missed.
Yeah, just want to quickly mention this. It's about an hour or so long. It's $5.99. And if you're training and looking maybe for some ways to explore your own game and maybe find things that are on the outer limits of what you're doing and just figure out what to do from certain positions, these games will kind of bring that out in you. And they're designed to do these games while you're rolling, while you're live training, just changing your kind of the modes and the goals you're working towards while you're grappling, and you'll see things that you don't normally see. You could roll every day the same way, and you know you'll get better at jiu-jitsu, of course. But when you kind of tinker with things, experiment a little bit, set some limits with what you're doing, you'll find parts of your game you didn't really know were there. And the great thing is, it's going to fit your game, and that's what these are designed to do. There'll be a link in the show notes. 6 BJJ training games, and they're fun. Like Gary with the kids class, he's having fun and learning jiu-jitsu. Trying not to get armbarred by kids.
You know, I can give a testament to your 6 games for BJJ. It has definitely helped my game. It has made me better. Definitely check it out. I think you'll like it, and I think it'll help your game, which is the most important.
Yep, it's all about getting better. So since I listened to Byron's book, I've been going left-handed a lot. So I'm with Gary. It's helped my game out, and I appreciate it.
What kind of podcast is this?
Oh, man. Can't even make the simplest and most innocent of statements on this podcast without getting grief from you guys.
Yeah, that's...
Hey, Joe, at least you didn't swing and miss, you know, when Byron set you up perfectly.
Oh.
That's funny. We like to talk about off-the-mat lessons, or maybe an on-the-mat lesson we take off the mat with us, and this is kind of a side lesson, I think. I've mentioned this before on the show, but it just happened to be relevant to me again. I keep a little written record, we call it like a journal, of times I'm injured or sick or anything that happens to me like that. I also keep them for my wife. She doesn't. I do it for her because she doesn't. She doesn't do that. But if she gets the flu in June or in January or whatever, I'll write that down. And maybe next year if she gets it again, how long it took her to get better, whatever. But for jiu-jitsu, we're getting kind of bumped up and accumulating a few injuries from here and there. And sure enough, about last week or so, I guess it's been almost 2 weeks, I kind of popped my lower back while attempting a sweep. Not the worst of my lower back injuries I've gotten. It just kind of popped, and then it was sore the next day, and I missed almost a whole week of just trying to just be extra careful. It never felt like it was the worst. But I go to my little injury journal, and I open it up, and I write down the date, and I write tweaked lower back, trying to do a sweep, and then I put the date. And then I came back and I put the date that it was basically 90% better. And so now I have that kind of record of what happened, how long it took to get better. And then kind of the cool thing is, it feels like I constantly am tweaking my lower back. Like every 6 months, every 3 months, 4 months, whatever. It feels like it's a lot more often. I look back, it was almost a year to the day. It was April 21st last year. And this year, we're recording this podcast a bit ahead of time. It was at the end of April when I tweaked my back. So it was April's not a lucky month for my lower back, evidently, but it's not constantly. It's not something that happens every couple of months. I got a whole year in between that, and I couldn't. I'm looking up further down the record there, but it's not like a constant problem. And I think that helps you track things. And if you tweak your knee or something happens on your body, write it down. And you can see if there's a pattern, or see, okay, it's always my left knee, or it's always when I'm doing this technique, and that'll help you either avoid those or address those, or even just dealing with that frustration to know, okay, it's going to take about 10 days for this to get better. So just I have a heads up. I've done this before. I wrote it down, and I remember, not really remember, I could reference that. And I think that's something that we should all be doing. I strongly recommend it. Make a little pain journal, injury journal, and just keep track of what's happening to you on the mats, or in life, if you're getting sick, or you might be able to figure out that you have an allergy to something. Every springtime, the first time pollen shows up, you miss a day at work or something like that. That's something that would be nice to be able to tell your doctor when you finally go in. Hey, here's what's been happening to me the last couple of years. But it's super easy. Basically, get a piece of paper and track what's happening with your body and what's causing it.
Byron, I wonder if, like you said, it was April 21st 2 years ago, and then end of April this year. I wonder if it's due to, like I noticed over the winter time, you don't do as much and you pack on pounds. And I wonder if it's, as soon as the weather starts getting better, you're going a little bit harder and you haven't shed that winter weight yet. I wonder if that has something to do with it.
Yeah, I'm trying to get that beach body for Wichita, Kansas back.
Yeah. Byron with a beach body.
I do think it was just coincidence, but it does. When it popped, I was instantly frustrated. There it goes again. And I expected it to look on my entries here, and it to be about 6 months ago when I last heard it. And it was a full year.
Yeah.
And I was, that's not so bad.
Yeah. Was it in the same spot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's good to know too.
Yeah. I do the same thing, but I don't keep that pain journal, which I think would be a good idea, because I feel like I do it every year, and it's always the same spot. It's always my lower left-hand side, and I wonder if it's really, instead of a year, if it's a year and a half, and it's not as big a deal as I think it is.
Yeah, and looking at my pain journal, most of them are groin injuries caused by carry.
Oh, and you're the one complaining about Joe talking about the left hand? Yeah.
No, yeah. I'm just looking at what's happening here, and there seems to be a pattern.
Yeah. But do you know any patterns beforehand? And what I mean by that is, like, I see seems like every time I hurt my back, I always have like maybe sore hamstrings or tight hamstrings where I'm feeling it that day or for a couple days before, like, maybe I had a really tough workout and my hamstrings were sore. And it seems like the one thing I've noticed is, even not writing a journal, is it seems like whenever I see that, there's a better chance I'm going to hurt my back. So now, I've kind of put it in my head that anytime my hamstrings are really, really sore, I need to warm up even more. I need to really be careful, not put myself in some crazy spots and not really explode till my hamstrings are feeling okay.
Man, that's an interesting statement, Gary. I think it's amazing that you kind of discovered that about yourself. I know I would not have. In my entry, I would have wrote, I noticed hamstring was sore a couple days before this, or the morning I got to work out. Yeah. And hopefully next time if I notice that happens, I look on the notes and I see it happen again. And just anything you can learn about your own body, because it is unique, is going to help you stay on the mats longer and help you avoid injuries, avoid some of that frustration. And for me, I have to write the stuff down because I'm not going to remember when I did it and what it was like.
Yeah, I do like that idea, and I think I'm going to start doing it. But do you just write it down when you have an injury, or do you just keep a journal every day kind of saying how you're feeling, or do you just put it down like, hey, I did April 28th, let's just say, I hurt my back today and, doing this and, this is how I felt.
So I do write some things down almost every day, but in the back of this little book I have a page I wrote down on the top of a pain journal. And then, so I'm only looking at stuff that is actually bothering me physically. And yes, I kind of mix up, if I'm feeling kind of ill or any of those types of things, but I know where to go because I couldn't filter through a whole year's worth of stuff to find when my last time I hurt my lower back. I look on this, it's like 5 lines up, and there it is, and it's easy to see.
That makes sense. Yeah, I'm going to steal that from you, Byron. I think that's a good idea.
Well, don't steal mine. Make your own, Gary. I kind of need mine's personal to me.
Byron, you take everything so literally.
Like that time I took your back.
Literally.
I got your back, I guess. Man, I butchered that one. Well, we're all setting new records.
For butchering.
Well, that brings us to the quote of the week.
Thank you, Joe.
I think there's some correlations to the quote and to your life lesson, Byron. The quote is by Lenny Olsen. It says, if you have committed a mistake in the day, make a note of it, learn about its cause, and respond appropriately to resolve it, and in turn boost your confidence. So, I think it's important not just to note the mistake, but like Lenny says, to learn about its cause and kind of do some investigation and figure out why you might have made that mistake so you can avoid that later. And I do think that correlates to your pain journal, like Gary was talking about. Look at what's going on a day or two before, if there was any maybe warning signs that you could note. And by keeping track of that and analyzing it, you can avoid things in the future that'll may cause you injuries.
Yeah, I really like this quote, and I think it does go just like what you're saying, Joe, with that pain journal we're just talking about. And it made me think of a little conversation I was having today with one of my training partners. And we were training Thursday night, and he ended up taking mount and grabbed my head, like going for a guillotine. And I didn't really defend. I thought I could sneak out the back door and thought I was going to be okay. I kind of let him get that position and thought I was okay. And, 30 seconds later, I was tapping quickly. And, I thought about it. And, after we got done rolling and, I was just sitting alone, and like Lenny says, I committed a mistake. I'm making a note about it. I'm learning about its cause, and I'm trying to respond appropriately. So I was just thinking, I was like, I was really lazy. I need to address when somebody gets into my danger zone instead of just thinking I can get out of everything. I was too lackadaisical. And, so that training partner, I was thinking about that afterwards, and I was talking to him on Friday about it too, later on. And so we rolled today, and the crazy thing was he was on the bottom, and he tried to sweep, and he exploded into me, but he was grabbing a single, and his head was on the outside. And as soon as we hit the mat, I grabbed a guillotine on him pretty quick and choked him. And we stopped for a second. He started thinking, and he's like, I was really trying so hard to get out there, and I make that mistake with you a lot of times, and I end up getting guillotined. And it was funny because we both just stopped, when I did it, made a note of it. He did the same thing, made a note of it, talked about his cause, and we were figuring out ways to respond appropriately so we want to get hit again with that same maneuver. But, I think this jiu-jitsu or anything in life, this is a great quote.
Yeah. Gary, would you say that that's one of the best things about jiu-jitsu is being able to make a mistake, learn from it, and keep going?
Yeah, that's what I love so much about jiu-jitsu is we're always going to make mistakes. And when you're going against a very good grappler, and you make a mistake, you're going to pay for it. And it's such a fun game because then you, as Lenny says, you make a note of it, you think about its cause, you respond appropriately. So then what you try to do is you have to figure out another way to take the back or to get the sweep without exposing your head, your arm, or whatever you expose. So it's kind of neat because you're never going to take that same path to grandma's house. You're always, there's always going to be different goblins and everything jumping out of the path. And, everybody's got a different way to keep you from getting to grandma's house. And you want to get to grandma's house because you want those cookies. So you're going to find a way to get there. So that's what I think is so great about jiu-jitsu.
Even if you have to go over the river and through the woods, you're going to get to grandma's house.
Yep, we're going to grandma's.
I've never heard that one before, but I like I explained that. And,
yeah, I told you I wasn't a typical normal person.
Yeah.
So, I'm gonna go outside the lines a little bit, Byron.
And that's what you have to do when you're a smaller grappler grappling with one of the bigger people on the mats. You're gonna have to find a different way to grandma's house in order to get the job done. You're gonna have to change a little bit of what you're doing.
Yeah, and think about it. Like Joe said, you're smaller. You need to get over the bridge and through the woods to grandmother's house because when you get to grandmother's house, you get cookies, and then maybe you'll get bigger.
Oh.
Yeah.
You were playing a small man game on the way to grandma's house, but when you leave, you're playing a big man's game.
Grandma takes care of you.
Oh, man. This is already deeper than I thought it would ever be. So as we transition here to the idea of big grapplers and small grapplers, I just kind of want to set the ground and kind of determine what are we talking about? Like what size difference actually starts to matter? For you guys, maybe personally, what do you feel? And then maybe just for the average person, I don't know. Joe, when do you feel like you take note of somebody's size difference?
Well, I think one thing that's got to be considered is fitness level. A guy that's just bigger than you by 30 pounds, but it's because he's carrying a just extra weight, is probably not going to have that much advantage over you. But if you're pretty fit and he's pretty fit and he outweighs you by 30 pounds of muscle, I certainly think that's significant. I don't think 10 or 15 pounds is too significant. When it comes to getting crushed, I think probably 250, 260, the total weight. I think that's when I'm really thinking a guy's a big guy.
Yeah, I'm thinking just a little less than you, Joe. I think 20 pounds is about when I really start feeling the difference. You can just tell you're on the mat with somebody that much more stronger than you, that much bigger than you, and that's when I feel like I start feeling it.
Yeah. I think the idea of getting crushed, there's a minimum there that they need to get, and it's typically not a lot less than me, which sounds weird. But in a bad position, you could be 10 pounds smaller than me and be crushing me, and it is miserable. And yes, that's easier to do if you're bigger than me. But I've been crushed by a lot of people who are of similar size than me. And a lot of times I'll roll with bigger guys, and I just won't let them get to that position, and I don't have to feel that crushing pressure.
Sometimes I think the people your own size are the better at crushing. They have, it seems like, better technique. They've really worked on that part of their game. And I've had some guys my size, 10 pounds smaller, that get onto me and crush me. And some of the bigger guys, I'm still getting crushed. They may be 70, 75 pounds heavier, but I just don't feel like that technique is as good as that smaller person. I think sometimes when you're bigger, unless you have similar sized training partners, you may not. You're always feeling bad for your training partner, so you may not be working that as much. Just that smothering, side control.
I think that's absolutely true, and I tell like big new guys, some of them you don't have to tell; they're just bulldozers. But if I roll with a guy that's been rolling a few months and he's got side control and I don't feel any pressure, I try and look and see how he can improve and tell him that he should hear me breathing heavy and talking different when he's got that position.
Yeah, you guys make interesting points. And a couple episodes back, we talked to Moku, heavyweight, black belt competitor, top-notch guy, and he talked about not being comfortable competing in the absolute division because he doesn't crush his training partners. And so now he's worried about bringing that kind of same style into the competition and not being able to turn that switch on to just smash the smaller competitor in that absolute division. It's not something that he could just turn on and turn off. He's going to go, he's worried he'll go a little bit less than he could because he's used to rolling with smaller people in a more polite manner. And it's an interesting thing to hear from a top-level black belt competitor say that, but I see how that could happen.
Yeah, I could see how that could happen, and I always kind of feel bad for the big guy. Everybody's always saying. I know Joe and I, and we were talking about it last week. Don't use your weight. You're too big, and I don't know. I just feel bad because if you use all your weight, people are like, hey, that's a disadvantage. You're cheating almost. And then on top of that, if you get tapped out by somebody littler, everybody's talking about it. You roll with that guy. People are watching it. And it just seems like sometimes people want to see you get tapped out. And, it's just a tough situation. I think sometimes I wouldn't want to be in that situation. Sometimes you feel bad about using your strength. And Byron, I remember talking to you a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about the big guy we roll with, and he just likes to get position and hold it, and he's darn good at holding it. He's heavy, he's strong, he's fit, he's athletic. And I remember you were saying it's like, hey, people would probably roll with you more if you reverse position every now and then, let people sweep you, put yourself in some bad positions. And I think there's a little dilemma with people, larger people rolling.
Yeah, they are playing a different game on the mats and socially, like next to the mats. And if they mess it up, that's going to affect their training. And the guy that Gary's talking about, super nice guy, very polite. And the thing I like about him is he's trying really hard, but I could tell he's not trying to actually do damage to me. That intensity isn't quite there to where I feel like he's training safely with me, and he's respecting the fact that I don't want to get injured doing this, but he's trying really hard. He's just being safe with it, and yeah, we'll get onto that a little bit about talking to these people and kind of getting them to understand what's going on. But him playing the same game over and over again isn't really helping him a ton either. But back to the original thing, really, around 30 pounds difference, I start to notice the weight pretty significantly. And like Joe said, how good of a shape they're in is a big deal. You could be big and not be all that strong, and you could be about my size and be way stronger than me. And those are different things. I guess that's kind of what's nice about having a variety of people to train with, because it helps you understand sometimes even by looking at somebody what they're going to be able to do. Like if you happen to find yourself in somebody is kind of coming at you off the mat and they look aggressive. I rolled with like 8 people that look just like you physically. And I have an idea if he pushes me how far I'm going to fall back. I understand if he grabs a hold of my head, what it's going to feel like. And just kind of give you that ground rule of understanding what this person is capable of doing physically. And I think that's a lesson that we don't always appreciate. So let's just say you guys are grappling with one of the bigger guys or gals on the mat, and it's a pretty good roll, pretty competitive, and you both are working pretty hard. What positions, what techniques are you looking to go for, and why?
Well, I'm not going to concede a bottom position if I don't have to. I like playing from top if I'm playing with a bigger guy. If I'm playing from the bottom, I really put a lot of focus on frames. If I'm bottom side control, I try and block the hip, get my knee in there if I can, and start working a guard back. And I think probably full guard is the safest position for me if I'm on bottom with the big guy.
I'm kind of the opposite of Joe there. I mean, I do like to get top position against the big guys. That's where I want to be. But sometimes actually a lot of the times, I pull half. I get into half guard. I feel comfortable in half guard. I feel like I have good sweeps in half guard that I can get myself on top. And I think sometimes, I guess because a lot of the big guys I roll with are super big. Byron knows my old training partner was probably 280 pounds. And I'd never even like to get on his back because if he would roll, if he was turtled and I tried to take his back from there, he would roll and it was almost like a dump truck, a street paver going over the top of me. And
And you guys would roll hard.
Yeah. And I think that's, one of the reasons, I'm trying to preserve my safety. And I feel, that I've got good frames, as Joe was talking about, in half guard. I feel like I can, come out the back door or get some sweeps there and get to the top position, which is my goal, is to get up top. But sometimes it backfires. They do pass my half guard, and then I'm in trouble, and I'm like, why did I pull a half guard?
Gary, are you using a knee shield at all in the half guard? Or
Yeah, I'm using a knee shield. But, I'm not just trying to sit in half. I'm trying to dig an underhook. I'm trying to sit up from there. And I really like the old school sweep, so I'm trying to sweep from there. But sometimes that knee shield, gets passed, and then I'm in major trouble.
Yeah.
But it's funny because that does happen. As soon as I feel that pass coming against a really big guy, all of a sudden in my head, I'm just like, oh, man. And I'm just scrambling any way to get out of there before it gets set.
I think this is interesting because, we had an interview with Brandon Mullins a while back, and he talked a little bit about grappling with bigger people. And it came down to playing your A game against them. And as Joe describes his favorite techniques against bigger people, and so does Gary, I would never pull half guard on a bigger person. To me, half guard's a miserable position with people my own size. It's not something that I'm good at. It's uncomfortable, and I'm generally not doing well if I'm in the bottom half. But Gary survives and thrives there. It's just a position he's better at. And so really, if you're looking at your game and none of it does well against bigger people, well, you also have to compare skill level too. But someone same or less skill, because the people even with less skill will be giving you a hard time. You maybe should develop a stronger part of your game that is going to match up well against them. We talk about everybody here, and I'm on the same page. Prefer to be on top. When you're rolling with a bigger person, it's great to be on top. Hard to do sometimes. Some of those takedowns are really tough too. One of my easiest ones is to pull guard. It's actually a fake guard pull and then come up with the foot. And they're so used to people pulling guard on them because they don't want to battle for the takedown. And then when you stand back up with the foot, they're kind of surprised and like, oh, I'm playing guard. That's one of it's kind of a surprise-ish thing. But a fake guard pull has been really well for me. And I do, Gary talks about, Gary's example is a bit extreme. The guy, he was 280-ish pounds, very athletic. I don't know how to picture a much stronger of a person than that. But Gary didn't like to be on his back. I prefer to be on someone's back when they're bigger than me, over mount or side. It's just, I feel like it takes their strength largely out of the picture. But when their size, their volume of person that they are can smash you, like Gary was experiencing sometimes, that kind of changes it as well.
Yeah, that's a good point, Byron. I think it's all, our experiences that we've had against people. Like I said, back control is a great position to be in, but I guess that was my first really big guy I ever rolled with, and I rolled with him a lot. And I would get back and I would get steamrolled, when he'd roll over, and I just felt like I got run over by a truck. So I kind of stopped doing that, and it's probably because that was my first experience with a really bigger grappler. But I like going back to what Brandon Mullins was saying and what you said there, Byron, is, it does make sense. We are going to, and I never thought about it, half guard is my favorite position. Joe likes top position. Byron, you like whatever.
You'll finally get the grappling with me one of these days, and I'll be in a position I like.
Yeah. But yeah, it does make sense. We've got a position we like, and the one thing I notice about my half guard is a lot of times I can get away without good frames, but when I'm going against a larger individual, I have to really concentrate on framing.
Yeah, we didn't talk too much about strategy. We talked about some positions and some techniques, but would you guys say that the bigger guy's likely to tire a little quicker? Would you think that coming at a big guy and just staying really busy, if you're a smaller guy, would be a good tactic?
You know, it goes back to the experiences. The two big guys I grapple with all the time, those guys do not tire, which is kind of crazy.
That's true.
Yeah, you don't expect it. I mean, these guys are machines. And what I find happens to me is I like to stay busy. I'm that guy who always likes to just throw submission after submission after submission out. And when I'm going with these guys, I tire so much quicker than regularly. And, you know, I'm so worried about not getting past that my submissions don't come up as often. And maybe that's one of the reasons why they're not tiring. Like I noticed the more, like as Joe said, I'm moving and looking to finish the game, people get tired quicker. And maybe I'm so worried about, you know, keeping the pass happening that I'm not, you know, throwing up as many submissions. You know, because I do have a habit of throwing up submissions and letting somebody pass or get a better position. I'm more worried about the submission versus position, which is actually kind of backwards.
I don't want to get overly excited about somebody getting tired. I mean, I'm not competing here. I'm training hard in a classroom setting. If somebody's tired, sit down around and you know, let's roll when you're not huffing and puffing and trying to catch your breath. We're making some to grandmother's house, little Goldilocks. But and skill comes into play here. It's not necessarily fair for everybody to hear this, but I'd rather win the positional battle while they're fresh, while they have what they have available for them, and defeat that. Yeah, a smaller person can keep up the pace as long as they're not getting crushed. And sometimes they'll wear out the person, and that's, you know, from a strategic point of view, that's a good strategy. And I would say if you're able to do that, that's great, because what happens to the smaller person is the pace can't be kept up, not because they're tired, because they're being smashed and they're being pinned down to the ground. If you're able to move and keep things moving, you're doing well. You're keeping your frames. You're keeping, you know, you get more attempts at things than if you're getting smashed. There's not a lot of excitement you're going to create, not a lot of movement you're going to be able to make and get the person to get tired. It's pretty easy to smash somebody for 5-10 minutes.
What I see sometimes, you're talking about that, Byron, of getting smashed. I notice if I'm getting smashed really bad, I tire quicker. And I think a lot of it, I mean, first of all, some of it's from pressure. But I think I break a little bit mentally, too. You know, you're just so sick of being on the bottom, not being able to get out. You're wasting energy. And then pretty soon your mind just, you know, falls off a cliff. You know, not positive things are happening in your mind. And I do find, you know, sometimes I start breaking a little bit mentally if I'm, you know, just on the bottom and just getting smashed for so long, and which in turn is going to make me tired quicker, and which is not a very good situation to start losing it mentally and being tired against a larger individual.
So you say that, Gary, but I want to put it in proper context. Gary trains a lot without a timer, where I'll train with somebody for a 5-minute round, and 2 minutes left, the big guy's got good position. This is going to be miserable.
Wait,
but
we
it's
have
2 minutes.
timers? There is a timer, Byron?
Some people have some on their phones, which are like a digital telephone where they have apps and they can have different things on there. But the phone doesn't ring at a certain time. It makes a little announcement or a little sound effect. But, you know, when you're in basically a time limitless round, you don't necessarily go to you submit somebody. It's not what Gary's doing here. They're going until, you know, you say, hey, that's good. Let's take a break, or let's just roll somebody else. And that could be 30 minutes. That could be 10. It could be an hour. And you don't want to be in bottom side control and say, hey, I'm good here, man. Let's get a drink of water. You want to get to a neutral position and propose that idea, or even a dominant position. Hey, let's take a break, man. I'm tired of having a mount on you.
Well, I can tell you, I rolled with a very big guy here a couple weeks ago, and we went for 2 hours straight, no water breaks. And I'm telling you, I guarantee I was on top for maybe 4 minutes. And we were in neutral position for probably, an hour and 20 minutes, and I was probably totally on the bottom, either mounted in under mount or under side control for probably 30 minutes. That was a brutal day.
But that's like you have more opportunity to be kind of broken mentally and frustrated because the timer is not going to save you.
Yeah. I mean, I wish there was a timer to save you, but you also make a good point. You were just talking about, let's just say you're not going with a timer. And, there's been times where I've been on the bottom, maybe mentally broke, and I just want the round to end. And let's say you're not playing with a timer, and, normally you always say you have to get submitted. I don't know. I never stop unless I get submitted or I submit somebody, or if I'm on the bottom, like kind of like what you said, Byron, I'll sweep to get to top position. I'll try to get to a top or a neutral position, and I'll be like, hey, man, let's get a drink real quick.
One more thing kind of about the, strategy or different way of thinking about it. An easy example, I think, to explain is arm drag from guard or from butterfly guard. I like this technique a lot. It's a good way to get to the back. If I'm going to arm drag somebody my own size or smaller, I really try to get them to turn, and I'll meet them halfway. If they're a lot smaller than me, I'll just basically stay on my butt and I'll rotate them and I'll get their back that way. But if they're bigger than me, I have to move around them. And so just the idea of I have the luxury of making them move, or I have to get up and move around somebody. That's a recurring theme when you're rolling with somebody of a significantly different size.
Yeah, that's definitely. And Joe, I want to ask you a question. Me and Joe are a little bit older than the average grappler. And Joe, what age did you start at?
I started when I was 37, but then after a year, due to life circumstances, I took a break, started again at 44.
Okay.
And I'm 51 now.
Okay. Because I started at 35, 36. And, the one thing I think about bigger guys, and I do see some of my younger teammates, in their 20s, young 30s, and they can use their speed aspect against the bigger guy. And Joe and I, starting later and being now, we're both 51 years old, like, I am so slow, it's unbelievable. Like, I don't think I could be faster than anybody out there on the mat. And, I think that's, I don't know, I just see the young guys just, almost going around in circles of these big guys. They're slower and they make up for it. And, I think as you get older, we don't, that's another skill set we lose to try to, take on the bigger individual.
Yeah, that's definitely a tool for a smaller guy to use. And it's, there again, it's just staying busy, even if you're not looking to tire the guy out. If there's some of the smaller guys and fit young guys that I grapple with, and I seriously feel like every time I turn into them, they're not there. And then I got to try and turn and spin, and like I'm always a half step behind, and certainly they're just busy, and I'm playing catch up all the time.
Yeah, those are the people that really get me, the really fast people, and I always feel like they're 4 or 5 steps ahead of me. I never know where they're at, and I can't catch up.
So something that's important for the smaller people to realize that you may not notice, that they do have an advantage training with the larger or stronger training partners, because you are really getting a super training partner. You're getting if you could plus 5 points to their size or to their skill or to their speed, you're going to train against somebody who's got advantages over you, which really gives you a training partner that is kind of supercharged versus you. And whether you could hang with them or not, skill level is a different thing. But just getting that person to train with is good for your training if you can do it safely. But on the reverse end of it, if you weigh 60 pounds more than everybody else in the class, all of your training partners are kind of taken down a notch, and you're going to suffer some of those consequences of basically not training with anybody your own size, anybody your own strength, and definitely not like a supercharged training partner or somebody who's a lot bigger, stronger than you. And that does have effects on your development on the mats.
Yeah, my advice to the big guy that finds himself in that predicament is just take a few minutes of each roll or a portion of each roll and just with a guy about your skill level anyway, not a new guy, but take a few minutes and work on that heavy game. And I think your teammates will understand that you got to develop that part of your jiu-jitsu.
Just as long as I don't have to be the volunteer.
Some people mind it more than others. I mean, I know we have a lot of kind of medium-sized guys at Fox Fitness who don't mind getting kind of smashed by the bigger ones. So find one of those guys for a round each night and work on your pressure. Yeah, that's a tremendous opportunity to do that. And when the bigger person shows up and they're new, that is awesome for you. The one thing you don't want to do, which happens, I think, all the time, is to see who's bigger and stronger and run them out of there. So you're still the big dog in the class. If you're 280 pounds and another guy 280, 290, 300 pounds shows up, that's going to be your best training partner that you can get in about a year. If you decide to just beat him down and show him that you're the boss and run him out of there, you just made a huge mistake as far as the development of your jiu-jitsu. You need to exchange phone numbers, and if he's not coming in for a month, to call him and see what's happening. And
you need to pick him up.
Yeah, this is your
dues.
partner.
Yeah. Well, it made me think about what Joe said earlier. You were talking about not run that guy away. We never want to run anybody away, but, that could be a great partner. And I was thinking about what Joe said earlier when he's training with somebody who's kind of new and they're in side mount and Joe doesn't feel any pressure. Joe's going to, work with that guy and say, hey, here's how to put some pressure. He's going to be on the receiving end of taking that pressure and help him out. And it's just, it's just makes your room so much better. It makes your team so much better when you've got people like that who are going to help you out, or people like Byron is just talking about, a big guy who's going to realize that that's going to be his best training partner. Let's keep that guy in here. It's going to help me. It's going to help that guy, and then it's going to help the whole room. Everybody just get better exponentially and literally.
This is way off the beaten path, but as you were talking, Gary, about the big guy and the new guy, and we've got some new guys at our gym at home, and they're younger guys. They look like they've been big their whole life, and one of them should have crushed me and didn't, and we talked about it a little bit. And I wonder for some of these kids if they've been told their whole life, you got to be careful, you're the big guy, don't be aggressive, and I wonder if it's ingrained in some of them. It seems hard to break them of the habit.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I bet it is ingrained in some. And Joe, you probably see it too, like I do. Some of these younger guys, they go really, really soft with us. They know we're a little bit older, and I'll tell guys sometimes it's like, hey, you can turn it up. I'm going to roll exactly how you do. I'm not as gentle as some of the other teammates who are making fun of my age, seem to think I am. So I just think there's a lot of polite people out there. They don't want to use their strength or their size, or they don't want to beat up the old guy.
Yeah, and then after the round, they say, "Are you okay, sir?" Oh, I'm hanging in there.
I think one of the easiest things to do if you're a bigger person and you're wanting to actually work on your jiu-jitsu and not just have kind of, I guess, a boring roll or non-competitive smash roll, is to pull guard and work on your guard. Again, referencing the interview with Moku a couple weeks ago, he was a guard player because he didn't want to rely on his strength to get better at jiu-jitsu. And now look at him. He's great at jiu-jitsu. Pull guard and work on that a little bit. And, if you're the person who's been coming to class and never pulled guard because you're 100 pounds bigger than everybody, people will be surprised at first. And yes, your guard is not going to be that good, but you have a lot of room for growth in that area, and it's going to be a tremendous jump in your your jiu-jitsu knowledge because you have something that hasn't been worked on. But just the idea when a big guy pulls guard and they didn't have to in a training setting, it just sets a tone for, okay, it's not that he's not going to try, it's that he's not going to try to use his strength or size. And then try a technical sweep or try like a nicely set up submission. You're not just kind of bullying me over and getting on top. You're trying to use your technique and try to set up the things that you've learned and not use your power and strength. But it's just from the bottom position with a guard, any guard, I think it just forces you to lose a lot of that size advantage from the get-go. That's why the big guys like to play top game versus each other, because they do have a size advantage, and that's to play top is to use it.
Hey, we've been talking about the big guys. I think it's time to talk about the smaller individuals and the trials and tribulations they go through. Was that better, Joe?
Yeah,
I think you said that better.
I butchered our last segue, so I had to try it again.
Yeah, it's different for the smaller people, obviously. I think they're easier to sympathize with, not synthesize with. I think it's a lot of this has to be handled next to the mat, not necessarily on the mat. While you're rolling with somebody, it's a little bit hard sometimes to deal with that. And so it could be the role of a coach, or just you as somebody standing up for yourself and saying, hey, let's say somebody's 100 pounds bigger than me, or 60 or whatever. And, I did tweak my back last week, or I guess it's been 2 weeks ago. And, hey, do you want to roll? You know what? I'm going to sit out this round with you. I'm sorry. Maybe next week or maybe next time. I kind of tweaked my lower back, or I'm not feeling it today, or I'm already pretty exhausted, and man, I know you're going to take it to me. Any of those, it's okay to say no, thank you, and not in a demeaning way, and not be rude to them, but just, hey, I'd rather not. You're more than I feel like I can handle right now. And when they get this a few times, they might look on what they're doing and try to change that, or they might just grab somebody else and roll with them. But I do think it's perfectly okay to say, hey man, I don't really feel like rolling right now. But saying that, oftentimes if you kind of watch these bigger people play jiu-jitsu, a lot of them are super safe. I remember when my wife first started training, I'd match her up with some big people, and she'd be looking over there and she's like, this is the biggest guy in the class. Yeah, but he's going to be good. He's not going to hurt. Don't worry. And she was surprised. And sometimes there's people that were much smaller than those people closer to her size were the ones that were being rough and not fun to roll with. And you can't judge a book by its cover, Gary. That's just another idiom that we used to throw out a whole bunch of those.
Yeah, you can't do that. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, Byron. The roughest roll I've had in the last week or two was against a kid that was like 145 or 150 pounds, and it was just rough cross face and rude, north-south behavior. I mean, it was just nuts. And so, yeah, you think the big guys are the one you have to worry about, that they're going to beat you up, but sometimes it's that little guy and flying elbows and all kinds of behavior that needs to be corrected.
Yeah, when north-south behavior is kind of nuts.
Personally, I like rolling with people much smaller than me. And I don't know, I just like to flow and try some crazy stuff I would never do. And I'll play a really loose game and just keep it fun. That's really fun for me. But I do have a lot of my smaller training partners will tell me sometimes, it's like, hey, Gary, please put some pressure on me. Like, I think sometimes I turn it into just such a flowing roll and just trying stuff, and that I don't ever put pressure on them. Like, I'll pass to side control, and then I'll just let all the pressure up and let them catch me back into half or side or half or guard, wherever they want to go. And I've had training partners correct me, and it's like, hey, Gary, put some pressure on, please. And so sometimes I'll just start going my normal way, and then I'll, depending on how that person wants to go with me, I'll go there and try to put a little more pressure if they need it. But I think I am just trying to be nice. I try not to be that bully when I do outweigh somebody tremendously.
Yeah, and even when you're playing top, it's a good opportunity to work on a different style of play or different techniques. I'll usually cage the hips with a knee and an elbow and try and control them that way and give them some space to move and work on that style of play if I'm rolling with somebody smaller.
That's a very good point, Joe. Yeah, try something different that you normally don't do in your A game. It's kind of almost going back to the 6 games for BJJ, like going to your bad side, doing something a little bit different. And, just it'll make your overall game better.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about when my wife is training, I am her main training partner. She'll get on the mats and roll with other people, obviously, but I always roll with her, and just by that one thing right there, she rolls with me more than anybody. And I have gotten into the habit of not rolling super hard against her, rolling kind of like Gary's describing, kind of a more playful style, and letting her do things and with that. And occasionally I think, you know what, that's not necessarily the best for her. And then I'll try to kind of flip a switch and be more aggressive and put more pressure. And sometimes she responds, great to it. And sometimes she gets frustrated by that. But I probably should just, hey, this next 5 minutes, I want to roll a little bit more aggressively. Maybe just give her that little heads up. I don't know, because it must seem random to her.
Yeah. Well, I saw today while you guys were rolling, you turned it on a little bit, and she went for a guillotine, and you were defending really well where she couldn't put it in, couldn't finish it, and that was a great sweep to mount. She got onto you and finished that guillotine, and you were actually choking. But what really impressed me is like you could just see the power of that sweep that she did.
Ooh, what would you call that sweep, Gary?
I would call it 3 men in a sweep, or 2 men, a lady in a sweep. Does that sound good?
Did she get some assistance?
So Byron's rolling with her, and but she's got Byron in a guillotine, and Byron's defending really well, and she's in the guard, and and I was rolling next to her with my training partner, and I told her to put a hook in and try to sweep, and she tried, but Byron's just too big as we go into that point. So while Byron couldn't see because his head was stuck, me and my training partner came around and I helped the sweep. So it was pretty impressive.
That was a very nice sweep.
Yep. The best, though, was when she did get top mount and finished.
Yeah. Saying all these things, not all submissions versus big people are the same. Stuff from the bottom, like armbar, I think sometimes you're going to get crushed. Triangle, sometimes you might experience some getting crushed. Omoplata, you're off to the side. You're kind of next to the person. Crushing may not be the answer they look for. Guillotine, I'm pretty comfortable trying that on bigger people. Sometimes they shoulder in and put some crushing pressure on. Just kind of explore the different methods the big people escape and find ones that can't really use their size as much. They have to fight the technique. Like a lot of leg locks. A lot of leg locks are highly technical, and their size is out of the play. Out of the play.
I really think chokes work great against big guys. I always call chokes an equal opportunity submission. They're going to work on anybody, and once you've got your arm wrapped around, and sometimes I think being the smaller person is better to choke. I mean, I've got a training partner who weighs like 120 pounds, and his arms are so small. Like, I think I got my chin tucked. I think I got control, and that arm fits through. And some of my bigger training partners, their arms are so big, they can't even, though they can crush my head, but they can't really get to my neck. But I do think, chokes, guillotines, rear naked chokes are great submissions to use against larger individuals.
Yeah, Gary, you ever hear of a guy named Helio Gracie?
Never heard of him. Who's he?
I thought maybe you might have. Yeah, he said for the choke, there are no tough guys.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's like you say, a big guy can power out of some of the other stuff, but with the choke, you can sort of be off to the side a little bit. The omoplata, that's a good one too, Byron, because you can put the submission on and have zero of your opponent's pressure on you.
Yeah, and you're talking about chokes. There are no tough guys. I remember when Byron and I first started, we had another really big guy that we trained with, and the guy was mean and cocky and mean and cocky and mean and cocky. But the best I ever saw, and everybody, me and Byron were the two bottom people in this class, and there were very few people who trained back then. But he was saying how somebody could not rear naked choke him, or he could just peel the arm off. And it was so great because Byron took him up on it. And Byron, got back position or back control.
He gave me back control.
That's
how cocky he was.
Yeah. And Byron put it on. And this guy was like considered a god. Like nobody could beat him or whatever until Jason Birchwood came down, which was great. But it was great because that guy's face was turning purple. He was about to go out, and I know Byron. The guy got out of it, but I was watching. I know Byron let him out of it to save his face a little bit. But and that's really early in my career. We were probably in it 2 months at that point, and I just remember watching, Byron 100 pounds lighter. Here's a very cocky guy. You just said he's so strong he can get out of this move from no matter who puts it on him, and Byron was about to put him to sleep.
Yeah, that whole story, and I do remember he's gonna be pissed when he taps or goes to sleep. When rolling with the big guys I train with regularly, I'm good to go. If I catch them in something, I catch them. If they catch me, that's fine too. But when I don't know the person, I'm a little hesitant to tap a big guy that might just end up making him mad. I kind of want to see how they react to a little bit of adversity, because like I mentioned before, I don't like to roll people who feel like they want to hurt me. And, if I am rolling with the guy I don't know, he's outweighed me by 80 pounds, and I piss him off, that's a bad idea. So I still find myself doing this today. I'll roll somebody I don't really know that well. They're a lot bigger than me, and they're not terrible at jiu-jitsu. I'll probably just work mostly positions, and I won't really work that hard to submit them. And I don't know if that's the best thing to do, but I do think that it makes it a little safer for me to not really agitate them a ton.
Man, I think that's great advice, and I don't think you have to only apply it to big guys. I actually roll with a guy that he's a nice guy, but he does not like to lose. He's small and he's quick, and he'll slap a submission on so quick you hardly have time to tap before you're in deep trouble. And I've seen lower belts tapping before and just thought, oh crap, that guy's in trouble now. So that's great advice. If you're not up for that type of grappling and you're grappling with someone like that, just roll smooth and easy and play for submit or positions, and don't poke the bear.
Yeah, definitely. You don't want that wounded cougar coming out.
So we're talking like it's the same thing. Somebody's size and strength, but they are two different things. You could be a very large person and not be all that strong. If you had a sedentary lifestyle, you never did anything, physically as a younger person, you could be pretty big and not all that strong. Size is still a factor. Just the bulk of somebody can become a big deal. You might find yourself like, I can't go to close guard. This person is too large, or your triangle may not be possible because just the size of their shoulders. And there's a lot of instances where just the size of somebody, even if it is a strong and fit person, but they're much bigger, they're not using their strength, but they can't not use your size. Your size is just part of who you are. It's like being tall or short. It's easier to armbar people who have longer arms. You can't make your arms shorter. You have to just deal with that. So there's not just the issue of them being much stronger or much more powerful. Just some people are big, and that's a factor. You may get both hooks in and feel like, I don't have any control of this person at all. Like they're able to still rotate their hips because you just don't get that control that you used to have with your hooks with that pressure, because it's not really wrapped around them very well. There's a lot of instances where just somebody's actual size can mess up your jiu-jitsu pretty quickly.
Byron, I've been around you for a long time now, and you used to always tell me that size doesn't matter. And now I hear you saying the opposite. I never thought I would ever hear that from you.
Yep. Something about me has changed, Gary.
I think not being able to get closed guard is a really good place to start. And as we've said at other points in this episode, just kind of pick an alternative to work on. And, feet on the hips is great. There's ways that you can sort of play the closed guard game without being able to connect your feet together. And if you're rolling with a big guy like that, that's a good opportunity to work on some of that half butterfly and transition maybe to spire guard if you're playing in the gi. And size can definitely be an issue, but it's a good opportunity to explore some other things.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're talking about, you can still use guard even if you can't catch connect your legs. And I've had that on people where I've had mount and my knees still don't touch the ground, so it's like I'm kind of on a log. And what I started doing is going to that frog guard, where I put my feet up almost like I have butterfly hooks, and just moving from there. And that was one of the ways I developed it, which is against a guy that I didn't like to take him out because my knees wouldn't touch. Just like I was on a log that was, would move back and forth.
Yeah, I guess either putting the hooks in, you're talking about putting them up in the pockets of his hips, or
yes, correct. Yep.
Or transitioning to like a technical mount or something.
Yep.
But yeah, just trying to hold regular mount up when you can't touch your knees to the floor isn't going to work.
Yeah, that didn't work at all. And I'll never forget the first time I got there. I'm like, okay, what do I do? I'm just like, this doesn't make sense. My knees are 2 inches from the floor, and I'm not stable. And nobody's ever brought this up to me before. What can I do?
But that's what's great about this is training with a diverse group of people. And you may not have the personal trainer every day, and maybe you're traveling and you experience that for the first time. It's like, man, that didn't work at all, or that was totally different than I thought it was going to be. But that's you put that in the bank and take it as a lesson learned. And sure, sometimes it's frustrating, being a smaller person rolling with a big person, or maybe being the biggest person in class and not getting, not feeling like you're getting a whole great workout. But it's just important to understand that this is just part of the process. If you're constantly getting beat by a bigger person, keep working on your technique. If you decide to compete, you don't have to compete against big people. That's not a big deal. And they are pushing you past your comfort zone, by definition, if you're experiencing that frustration from a bigger person. I think a lot of it, talking to my wife after, training someone, she is frustrated because even though she did something correctly, even though, it was done to her satisfaction, it didn't work. Somebody just muscled out of something, and that's part of it. Keep working at getting better. Maybe do something differently or do a different thing entirely. And there are ways to dismantle somebody who's much stronger than you. But when they also know jiu-jitsu, it's pretty tough.
I like what you said there, Byron. Sometimes, we do everything right and it's still not working. And, one thing that's always helped me is I always look at that as an opportunity versus getting upset. And before I used to get upset, it's like, hey, how come that didn't work? And now I look at it as a way to expand on my jiu-jitsu game. It's like, okay, I did this perfect. Somebody's really strong and muscled out of it. Now I got to figure out a new setup, a new way to get to that same position and make it work. Maybe I just need to adjust this, adjust that, and it will work. As Byron says, it'll allow me to dismantle that person. And I just like it now because it's almost like I'm taking my car back after, running a quarter mile, and I'm trying to tune it up and getting it to run a little bit faster, a little bit better next time. And I'm just trying to make my submission a little bit better each and every time by fine tuning it, and hopefully it'll work that next time.
Well, this kind of wraps up what we had in mind for the big versus small or small versus big conversation. Really, it's going to be training wise, try to use it and think of it as a good thing. And I guess really more focused on talking towards the small people rolling with the big. They are an advantage. And it goes back to, Gary mentioned, we had kind of a bigger, kind of a not super nice big guy that was one of our early training partners. And we didn't really like him as far as rolling. He was a nice enough guy, but he was kind of a pain to roll with. And then one day we had a guy come into the gym, and he was kind of looking to test us and push us and see if we could fight well. And the big guy was like, yeah, let's go, man. I'm like, oh, that was cool. He's here. That's a good thing that he could handle, because I was like, I don't want to fight anybody. And they didn't fight, but it was a different type of grappling that I wasn't up for, a guy trying to actually injure me or to test and see if we were a bunch of chumps on the mat. And the big guy stepped up, and it might just be, you're a big guy, you eventually become friends with them, and some other big guy comes in and is kind of not super nice, and okay, we got another guy for this, and we've worked with them to get them as good as we can. I don't know, it's kind of that feeling like they're on your team, and that's a big deal. We didn't really talk about competitive, big versus small, but it all goes the same way. Work on your good things and have things that are good that work against people that are big. But that was a fun conversation, gentlemen.
Yep, and remember, as Byron says, size does not matter.
No, you've changed it on me, Gary.
Well,
And
as Byron used to say, size does not matter.
And if you'd like to test that theory out, you can find Byron and Gary in Wichita, Kansas, and go train with them. Always welcome guys coming through town to train with us. I'm south of Houston and occasionally over in the New Orleans area. So if you're in the south or in Wichita, Kansas, let us know, and we'd like to train with you.
Hey, Joe, what's going on in Wichita, Kansas, June 23rd or June 22nd to June 24th?
Yeah, so that weekend there will be a BJJ Brick event hosted by Fox Fitness in Wichita, Kansas. Friday night we'll have open mat. I should be there. Gary, Byron, last I heard both you guys might make it.
Yeah.
I will be there.
I work that day, but I should be able to get off.
I will be there. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we should all be there. I'm flying up that morning, so we'll be on the mats Friday night for open mat. And Saturday we got Tim Sled and Rolly Delgado. They'll be bringing some knowledge. Looking forward to hearing from both of those guys. And then Sunday, the BJJ Brick team will be bringing some instructions, some good times and chokes and jokes. And it's going to be a good weekend.
Yeah, the schedule for Saturday, the big day, 10 to 11:30. There's a seminar, kids seminar at that point. Definitely a message, call, or email to register. You can email Fox Fitness BJJ, FOX1X, fitnessbjj@gmail.com. 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock is a gi workshop with Tim Sled. Don't want to miss it. 3 to 5, no gi workshop with Rolly Delgado. Another one you don't want to miss. 6 to whenever, barbecue and beers. What a awesome day.
Yep, we're gonna have a great time with the kids. We've been forgetting to mention that there is a kids seminar, and I'm really excited to watch Tim Sled teach a kids seminar and see how he does this, because teaching kids has definitely been something that I've struggled with, and it's just a different thing to do. And I know he's very good at it. And coming from Autos, he's got a lot of different things that I've probably never seen before, and the way he runs a kids class will be very cool to see. So I plan on just showing up and watching, taking a few pictures. I'll probably doing that all weekend anyway. And that's going to be the kids one. So if you haven't mentioned, I'll do it 10 o'clock to 11:30, and it's kind of a separate thing. So obviously the kids don't need to register for the whole seminar. That's when you would email foxfitnessbjj@gmail.com and just contact Jake about that and see kind of how to set that up. And it'll be, I know we have a good group of kids here in Wichita that'll be attending. And if you're coming from out of town, that's awesome as well. If you bring in the kids, it should be a lot of fun. Trying to figure out the best time. I don't know anybody's schedules on Sunday, but maybe after the BJJ Brick guys do their thing, our thing, get showered and cleaned up, and maybe lunch together, and I'm working on finding a location to do a kind of a live recording in front of a little bit of an audience for an episode. Would be kind of a fun thing to try. Also got one of our Patreon supporters, Mindy's coming from Kansas City, and she wants everybody to know, especially the ladies, hey, there'll be some ladies in attendance at the BJJ Brick event. So if you're on the fence about, will it be the only girl there? No. There'll be a handful, of course, and you'll be able to partner up with anybody, that wants to partner with you, I suppose. I don't know how to say that, but I know Mindy will be there, my wife will be there, and a handful of the ladies from Fox Fitness will be there as well. So, you won't be the only woman there if you're questioning that. The answer is there'll be several, and they'll be having fun.
So girls on the mat, kids seminar, something for everybody. Gary, I do think that's a little bit of bad news for you. Those kids are going to get tough. They're going to get better. and your success in the kids class is probably going to go down the next week.
Well, I think I'm not going to show up for any more kids classes after the 23rd, so I should be safe. I always dodge good competition.
Yep, Gary, he's clever about when to not even show up.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Speaking of clever, our own Byron Jabara is pretty darn clever. And Byron, this week you have your own article.
I did it,
Tell
guys.
us about it there, Byron.
Okay.
How was that for a segue?
Very nice, Gary.
Thank you.
I'm reading this book called Practice Perfect, and 42 Rules for Getting Better at Getting Better. It's a really cool book, not about jiu-jitsu, but about the idea of practice and what to do differently and how to change your practice and that sort of thing. And I kind of got this idea from that, and I put it into the jiu-jitsu world and gave some examples. But the idea that critiquing somebody and correcting somebody, that's two different things. And it may seem like, well, it's about the same thing. Totally different things as far as results. Yes, you're trying to help them, and you're trying to coach them and guide them. But the critique is when, Gary Kimura's me, and then he tells me, yeah, I did that because when you tried to escape, your elbow came out a little bit, or you shouldn't have turned it that way. That was the wrong way to turn, or whatever he gives me for advice. That's a critique. That's feedback I desperately need. I need some help because he's Kimura me unanswered a million times, and I appreciate the feedback. But to correct somebody and make that correction is a great tool. So Gary Kimura's me, finishes it, and I get tapped. Or at this point, I know he's basically got it. So he could set it up, start to finish me, and then I tap, and Byron, let's rewind a little bit. So we just literally rewind what we did. He's back in position of getting the setup Kimura, and he could tell me, right here, you need to do this. I don't know what the answer to this question is, but right here, you need to turn your shoulders down, or rotate your body, or don't worry about fighting your hands, fight the position of your arm. That's a correction. He's correcting me in what I'm doing, and it's a problem that I've had consistently, and he's changing my game. And then he says, let's go, make this correction and let's go, or focus on this idea and let's do it. I'm going to Kimura you again if you don't do it, and we get to do it again. And he may Kimura me again, or maybe I bust out of it using his own advice. And that's the difference between a critique is telling somebody what they did wrong, and correction is going back and letting them fix it and get that muscle memory changed. See what it looks like when they do it right. See what it feels like when they do it right. And, I'm reading this book, and I'm like, this has to be explained to the jiu-jitsu world, because I think we're all good about critiquing somebody, giving them a little tip, telling them how it worked. But saying the words, hey, stop right here, pause. Let's rewind a little bit, and I'll show you what you did wrong, and let's go again from that same spot. That's a hugely powerful tool hugely powerful, that's a great way to say that. It's a very important tool to help people develop jiu-jitsu in their own game. That's all I got, guys.
That's awesome. That's hugely effective.
It's got to be huge.
Well, I can tell you that's the way I learned. And I do that, in the giving and receiving position. Oh, that doesn't sound right. But
are you pitching? Are you pitching or are you catching?
Or like in the submitting or not getting submitted.
There you go.
Submitting or getting submitted. And that's the way I learn it. If I'm catching somebody with it, I'm going to critique them and tell them how to get out of it. But we're also going to then do that correction that Byron's talking about. We're going to get that muscle memory. We're going to do it. And same thing when, I'm rolling with Joe and Joe catches me with something and it's like, hey, Joe, how do I get out of this? Joe tells me how to get out of it. And then we're going to drill it a couple times. So I know it. And then, then we're going to get back to rolling but I'm going to keep drilling it, for weeks on end. So I get to that point. And, I think that's the way, like Byron said, to learn, to get better, practice is what's going to help.
Yeah, I would say that I don't think critique is necessarily a bad thing. I think they each have their place. It's hard to if I roll with you and I say, hey, give a look at my guard work and tell me what you think. There may be so many issues you can't fix them all in one training session, but you can offer a general critique and point some things out, and I think that has some value. And then, like you said, if it's a simple thing, if it's something we can fix right now, let's take the time to do that.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying never critique somebody, but just the idea of having them go back and do it again. It may be more geared towards fine-tuning things, but letting them experience it done correctly, I think it's a big deal. So the article is on our website, bjjbrick.com. There'll be a link in the show notes. I think it's a simple concept that may kind of be a little deceptive as far as the effectiveness of correcting somebody, letting them hit that play button and go live with it, and actually feeling the difference. Check out the book as well if you're looking for different coaching ideas. I've written a couple of articles that haven't been released yet. Maybe they have by the time this is out, but from the ideas from the book, Practice Perfect. I really enjoyed that one. Not a long book, not a hard one to read either. It's a good coaching book.
Is there a lot of pictures, Byron?
No, I mean, I have more pictures on the article than I think the book has in its entirety. And I made this article also a video, kind of hitting it 3 sides. I'm going to try to do that as well. Anytime I write an article, turn the camera on, sum it up in like 5 minutes, and that way I could do a video of it. I think I do a little bit better job of saying what I think opposed to writing it down in an article. But anyway, it's just so much easier to crank out a 4-minute video than it is to write a 6-paragraph article. Might as well do awesome. A video.
So the video is the Cliff Notes. So I didn't know you had the video out yet, so I'll watch it later. But I thought it was a great article. I like the way it was written, to the point, and it's a valid point for sure.
Quick note about our social media. Check us out on Facebook, YouTube, and those are our 2 biggest ones. And just mentioned our article has a video companion with it. Go check out the article or go find the video, and then they each link to each other. Man, that's convenient. Also have a app, which if you're not used to listening to podcasts, maybe you're sharing this with somebody. You have an amigo that likes podcasts or that doesn't really understand podcasts. Have them get the app, and that should be an easy way to get that onto their telephone. I want to give a quick shout out to our Patreon supporters. They have been hugely big. They have been tremendous in helping us grow this podcast to what it is today. I want to thank Mark, David, and Brad for being continued Patreon supporters, and it means a ton that those guys would say, hey, yeah, I want to support this podcast and help it grow. I'm only pitching $1 or $2 per episode, and lend in my financial support. It means a ton to us, guys. So if you want to help us out and help us grow, there's a link in the show notes about Patreon where you can pitch in $1 or $2 per episode, and it helps us a ton. So check that out if that's something you want to do. I've had a great week talking about people, big people and small people on the mats. I think this is one we probably should have covered a while ago. Maybe we've talked about it. I know we've talked about it like in little segments, but to have a full episode on this thing, this was great, guys.
Okay, time for our audio book of the week. Byron's working on a good one. It's called Over the River and Through the Woods to Grandmother's House We Go. Training opportunities you might find on the way to Grandma's house.
Yeah, this has been something that I've been really passionate about as far as when you walk in the woods and you've got that destination, you're wanting to get to those cookies, but there's some dangers along the way. You've got to be well-trained to handle those. And I'm already having a little bit of trouble here because I don't know. I think the big bad wolf is Goldilocks. What is the main culprit of the grandmother's fairy tale? Help me out here, guys.
Well, you do have to worry about the big bad wolf.
But he huffs and he puffs and he blows the house down.
No, that's not Grandma's house, is it?
We're butchering this, gentlemen. So
there are 2 different wolves, I think. One is the 3 little pigs, and one is Grandma's house.
Yeah, Grandma has a wolf too. Yeah, she just doesn't blow the house down. This one's trying to.
It sneaks in, eats. Yeah, this is a terrible story. Sneaks
the
in,
porridge
and
eats the porridge.
That's the Goldilocks one. It sneaks in and somehow replaces grandmother in her place, and you're like, "Wow, what big teeth you have, grandmother!" And better to smile at you or whatever it is. And it's actually a wolf the whole time. But the idea that you're on your way to Grandma's house, you got to do some training, you got to get ready. You don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I guess it's kind of a wild place. So yeah, you're doing your bear crawls, your gator crawls, your gator rolls, and all these different things just on the way. So I think it's a good idea to be able to train without training partners, which isn't typically effective training, but you could always do a little bit of things, especially if you're away, on the way to Grandma's house. You're not, I don't know of any gyms anywhere near my grandmother's where she used to live. So yeah, you're going to be out for a little while. Still, do some of that training, do a little bit of maybe the same warm-ups you do at jiu-jitsu, and make the most of it. So that way, when you get to Grandma's house, you might be a little sweaty, but it's mostly your sweat. But you are ready and warmed up in case there's a wolf there. And that's the big thing. It's about getting warmed up before you get there.
Yeah. Well, I like your article on how to make the most of your training in awkward situations. Like, tell us a little bit about the chapter you have of how to shrimp on the forest floor and not be annoyed by all the pine cones you're shrimping over and poison ivy and stuff like that. So, yeah, talk a little bit about that chapter. I really enjoyed that one.
The biggest thing about shrimping on the forest floor is you got to have a belt. It may seem a bit stupid, but when you're not wearing your normal grappling clothes, sometimes your pants are a little bit loose. And when you start shrimping and your pants kind of get creeped down a little bit, that pine cone might get a little more friendly than you anticipated. And that's going to make your shrimp be terrible because you experience one pine cone like that and you're never going to want to shrimp again. So just having a belt, keeping the pants up where they need to be, makes your shrimping a lot better in the woods, out of the woods, whatever. And I'm not talking about a black belt or a brown belt or blue or white, just a pants retention system that is the belt.
Ooh,
even the suspenders would work.
I like that pants retention system. Never heard of that one.
Yep, that's another word for belt.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know about suspenders. Can you imagine taking a guy's back and he's wearing suspenders? Talk about loop jokes.
That would be great.
So that's all. It's a pretty simple book. I think it's really aimed at helping, I don't want to say kids because the whole belt idea was pretty adult, but helping people get to where they want to go if it's through the woods.
Yeah. Well, the last thing I would like to talk about on that one there, I know you're trying to get out of here and get to a safe place because Byron, likes to go to a safe place. But, you had the, man, I forgot what I was going to say.
That's my favorite part about jiu-jitsu.
That's my favorite part about talking with my grandmother is she would be mid-sentence.
She forgets what she's going to say.
So, but she's still smiling and having a good time. That's one of the things that, oh man, that's terrible. But I don't know.
But no, I was going to go back to
okay. Let's hear it, Gary.
No, to what you would after you trained. You would go in and you talk about nutrition, about ways to recover from your training session of shrimping on pine cones and poison ivy, and just the nutrients, the macros and the micros that your mom gave you, your grandma. So tell us a little bit about that, like what she would feed you to replenish yourself.
Okay, this whole chapter is just totally out of frustration. You get to grandma's house, you're exhausted, you're trying to recover. Does she have Gatorade? Sure, but it's from the 70s. Not the biggest fan of that. Oh, look, a chocolate chip cookie. That's going to be delicious. So I get my chocolate chip cookie. Thank you, Grandma. I get a little bit of milk. I sit down at the table. I'm all the happy little Byron, ready to go. Take a bite in that thing. And it's raisins.
Oh, man.
That's a nasty trick.
Don't get me started on this. This is the worst thing ever. So, but what she was doing was helping me get a little bit more fruit in my diet. Post-workout recovery, raisins is what she thought would be best for me. So I ate more raisin cookies than I wanted and less chocolate chips than I would have liked. But, that was her way to sneak in a little bit of healthiness into a cookie was raisins. Darn it.
Yeah, but that chapter really helped me because one thing I didn't know about nutrition, and now I've started having raisins, after I've rolled. So it's definitely done great, and it's definitely made me more regular.
Don't pick the raisins up off the first floor and eat them, though.
Well said, Joe. That's good advice, and that'll be an appendage later on in the book. Yeah, man. I had a fun time, gentlemen. Stay sweaty, my friends.
Hold on.
Oh, Gary, dang it.
No, one last thing. We're talking about the nutrition part. Tell us the one about, in your last chapter where you talked about you ate some mushrooms while you were rolling and about the effects that mushroom had on you. So tell everybody about that. That'll definitely sell this book for you.
Yeah, you have to tell us about it because the next 3 pages in the book were just gibberish and pictures.
Well, that's true. What happened, and it all makes sense now. When I got there, my grandmother had a big nose like a wolf. She was all furry and had giant teeth. You know what? I think those mushrooms kind of did me in, and I was hallucinating some things. And she called me when I got home, make sure I made it home okay. And a wolf wouldn't have done that, but I thought for a while there that grandmother had turned into a wolf and I ate some snacks along the way.
So did you beat your grandmother thinking it was a wolf?
I don't know what happened. I need to go check on her, guys.
So yeah, definitely, Byron. We should get out of here so you can go over the hill and through the woods.
This is one of my better audiobooks that actually worked out okay with some help from Gary not letting me go too soon. But anyway, stay sweaty, my friends.
And don't forget to go to Grandma's house.
Train hard, train smart, train at Grandma's house, and we'll see you all on the mats.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
You know, we've spent a lot of time talking about the big guys, but what if you're the small guy? What do you, what do you do? How do you survive? That's a terrible segue. Start that over.
You butchered that one, brother.
That wasn't terrible, but...
That was terrible.
Take another stab at it. Before we go, how about your audiobook, Byron?
Yeah. What do we have?
When it's hard to find a training partner, gator rolls, bear crawls, swamp monsters, and other... oh, God, I butchered that.
Something about the journey to Grandma's house would be funny.